Oh, hello. Good evening, Ronnie Dee. Every time I hear that, I think you're like Jersey Shore or something, and I want to
Oh, the enthusiasm. Thanks for having me on tonight.
Thank you so much for coming on. Like before we went on, I was telling you, you were recommended by a very good friend of mine, Rochelle Stratton, who loves coming to your places. So, which I hope one day. I've never been there, but I do know a lot of people that have been to. They always call it Old Pittsburgh, right? Or Old South Pittsburgh.
Old South Pittsburgh, yeah. Old South Pittsburgh Hospital
Old
in
South
South
Pittsburgh.
Pittsburgh.
Yeah. So I know that there's a lot of people that have been there. I hear a lot of good things about it. So I appreciate having you on. And one of the reasons I wanted to have people like yourselves on is because, I just want to, if there's people out there that aren't aware of your places, I want to try to help promote and get the word out there. That's all. So with that being said, why don't we start with you? We don't have to get too personal. We can get as personal as you want to, or not at all. But just basically like where you come from and how you got into the paranormal. Are you yourself an investigator? And this and that. And then I want to talk about both of your places that you own.
Okay. Well, I've been doing this for about 25 years. I've been investigating for about 25 years now. Kind of just started out like anybody else did, watching shows and was interested in it. And it was kind of neat because, when you watch the show and you hear an EVP, you're kind of like, yeah, BS. So you got to kind of have to experience it yourself. I was never an expert or really, really into it that deeply. It was more of always kind of a hobby for me. So I did. I went out. We assembled a team up here in Chicago, and we started going from location to location to location and just really, really fell in love with it. I think I fell in love with not only the paranormal end of it, but also the historic value of all of these locations. And I think that's when you combine the two, when you combine the paranormal with the history, it's just a really intriguing industry to be involved in. And my love for it just continued to grow and grow and grow. And I think most people who investigate, you get that little piece of evidence, whether it's an EVP or something, and it becomes an addiction where you want more and you want, you start, I guess, getting involved with other groups and that kind of stuff, and they start telling you of the experiences they have, and then you kind of want that experience for yourself. So, it just became an addiction. And then, it was something that we did, once a month, and that became every other week. And then I made a lot of really good friends up here in the north with friends out in Iowa and local places. So I just call them on a Thursday evening and say, hey, is the building booked? And like, no, come on down. So I'd get in the car and drive, 4 or 5 hours and spend, 5 or 6 hours in the building with the owner or with the caretaker. And we would do some hunting. And I just think it became, like I said, kind of an obsession and kind of an addiction. And here we are 25 years later, still love the investigating and still love the paranormal as well as the history.
That's awesome. And I agree with you. I feel like, I'm a big, huge Gettysburg lover. And I know a lot of the historians, kind of poo-poo the paranormal, it's like taboo, they don't like to, acknowledge that side of it, which is disheartening because I look at it like, we're trying to keep the history alive too, just like they are, but in a different way.
Right.
If you can connect, some answers to some legit history, You know what I mean? Like, to me, that's, you're keeping the history alive. You're also helping preserve places. The money that is raised, the money that is used and raised and, goes back into these locations, to help preserve,
Yeah.
So I think a history, look, if I go to a place and it has a meaty history and I don't have a paranormal experience, I'm still happy.
Mm-hmm.
That
When we bought South Pittsburgh Hospital, it's a good example. Is that when I purchased it, it was already running and it was open by their management and all of that kind of stuff, and that team kind of went down the dark path, I guess you would say, is they kind of created history and they created things that didn't happen in the building to sell it. And so when I purchased the hospital 6 years ago, it was a real challenge for us to get the historical society to come talk to us. Because the first thing they said to me is, "Oh, you're those ghost people." And it's kind of funny. They label us as the ghost people.
right,
And it's a good couple of years for us to actually, be able to sit down and talk with them and tell them that, we're not sitting, in a room with a pentagram and trying to conjure up demons and, and all these evil spirits, that we're actually really, trying to save the history of the building, as
right,
well as talk to some of the residents in the building.
right.
And as we move forward, now the historical society is like, anything I need, I can give them a call, and they're like, "Hey, yeah, this, that, whatever." So it's really changed, because I think, owning OSPH, Old South Pittsburgh Hospital, it's not only about the paranormal, but it's about, like you said, preserving the building itself, as well as preserving history. And
Yeah.
one of the things that my team and I did was, we tried to disband all of those old bogus, selling points that the old team and the old owners did, to get people in there. Because you know what, we don't need to lie. I mean, if you come to our
Right.
buildings, either one of them, they're active. I mean, and
Right.
they're amazing locations, as Jenny would say. But we don't need to make stories up. And I think the thing that's really neat is, as we actually got into the historical value of the building became more active. Like, anybody who knows, who's actually been to the hospital prior to my ownership, it was kind of a drab location. It was kind of aggressive, actually. And you'd walk in and it just wasn't, it felt real down and really, and now you walk in and it's very light, and our spirits, actually, or residents, we call them, actually like to interact with you, like to joke around with you. Some of them will get a little dirty with you. But yeah, we've got a couple of young men who that we have actually traced their deaths and everything. And one of them is a really, really dirty young man. We had a young lady who was doing the Estes method, and she was younger. And this gentleman actually started using words that surprised all of us. And his name is Johnny. And we kind of got the records of his death and everything in the hospital. And but yeah, he's a real character residentially in the building.
So there's a couple of things you're saying that I love that you're bringing up. And one, is, the challenges that you have had to go through to get a good rapport in the community after having to deal with, that's the thing. I'm huge with legitimacy and people being real and doing it for the right reasons and this and that. And I know there's a couple of locations that do what the previous people did at your place. They lie about what's going on there just to, and there are teams that go in there and lie about what's going on there just to make money for ticket sales and this and that. And they don't realize the damage that they are doing. They say, "Oh, it's entertainment," and no, but it isn't. This isn't something that you play around with. It's like, because of the situation that you're saying right now, like you're trying to get help from the historical society, and not them not knowing any better, as a global whole, you're a joke, right?
Right.
Like, it's not, they don't want anything to do with it, because when you actually need their help. And that's what I'm saying, a lot of these people don't understand what they're doing when they're going into these locations, and they're acting like fools, and they're lying about stuff, and there's a demon here, and there's this here, and there's that there. I mean, it's literally hurting the field more than it's helping anything. And it's hurting the locations that are legit, So I applaud your hard work with trying to get the name cleared and to get the space cleared. And I think that with that is why now the energy in the place is so much better. I think that prior to that, when you're doing something for the wrong reasons, that's a negative thing you're doing, so you're putting that negative out there. So it's going to not like what you're doing,
Right.
and so, the fact that you're doing all this now for the right reasons, and you're doing it, out of your own passion and your own, you know what I mean? And trying to preserve these locations, the spirits love that,
Right.
I mean, and like you said, we don't have to lie.
Nope.
We don't have to lie.
And what a lot of people don't understand too is that like OSPH was closed in 1999 and our new location Harriman was closed in 2013. So you've got a lot of people who are still alive, who whether they worked in that building or were patients in that building or either one of them, they're still alive and they are very, up on what happened in those buildings. And, for us to run around and say there's demons in here, or anything like that, that really affects these small town communities. I mean, you're talking about South Pittsburgh, the whole area. And I think South Pittsburgh alone, I think has got like 1,100 people, residents that live in the town itself, and everybody knows everybody. So when you start talking about bad history and you start talking about these hospitals that save lives and you're turning a negative spin on it, you're talking about really demolishing a whole community, that hospital, served for many, many years. And what most people don't understand too is that these little hospitals were not only hospitals, but they were places where the community would hang out on a Saturday or a Sunday. Because from my understanding back then, the cafeteria food was actually good. So,
Yeah.
you would have a family that would come down and they would visit with other family members and they, so these were not only, they were community centers as well. And for us to be running around and, making up rumors and really giving them a bad reputation just makes, like you said, us and the community look really bad.
Yeah.
So my staff and I, we work really hard on making sure that, when YouTube videos go out there, they don't use words like demons and conjuring and possession and that kind of stuff. And we try and keep as much of the history as we can, accurate so that somebody's like a good example is that the old owner said that there's this giant war on South Pittsburgh's property. And that's where a lot of the spirits have come from. We have actually dug it up and there was never a war on the property ever.
Right.
It was in the South and we're probably about a quarter of a mile from the Tennessee River. So, during that time, there were Indians that would, obviously use those trade lines. And then there were soldiers that would walk those lines as well, too. But there was never any fighting or, slaughters or anything like that. But, we realized that the old owners did this because that's what sells. Nobody wants to sit through an hour of me sitting in the dark and, a REM pod going off for, one time in an hour, whereas I can throw demons out there and run down the hall looking like a fool, and that's what's going to sell. So I understand that that's the direction they go, but unfortunately, like you said, that hurts what we're trying to accomplish in our locations.
Listen, I literally, for me, I want to touch on what you said too. You get that one little thing, you get that one little piece, and you're like, oh, I want more, I want more, I want more. I always compare it to I love meteor showers. And you can sit out there and watch for meteors all night long, and you can see one fly through, and you're like, oh my God. And then you want to sit out there and wait for you'll sit out there forever and wait for the next one. It's the same thing. Even if you get one EVP in the entire night, for me, that's successful because
Right.
it's not.
Uh-oh.
Excuse me for a second.
And now for this quick commercial break.
What are you doing? Well, hello.
Oh.
My dog is scratching on the door. Go ahead. You come up here. Mommy's doing her show. I apologize. I don't know what he wants.
Scheduled program, Paranormal Brew, live in progress.
Hi, baby. Anyway, sorry about that. Now I forget what I was saying, but it's for a real investigator and a real, somebody that's doing real research and somebody that wants to really help a property and somebody that really wants to try to connect the haunts with the history or the history with the haunts. They're not going to do that. They're not going to want to run around and say, who the heck? There's nobody I know in their right mind wants to encounter a demon. Nobody. There's not one single person, and like you said, there's a community of people around you that know these locations that aren't into the paranormal, but they know these locations. You don't want to put a bad name to it.
Right.
And 25 years, I'm 20 years. I've, knock on wood, never have come across anything close to demonic. I've never come across anything even mean. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, I think even the guy you were talking about with the vulgar words, I think is just, that's how he talks.
Mm-hmm.
In Gettysburg, you get the the 19th century spirits. Maybe they might use some vulgar words or not, but more likely it's not going to be that way.
Right.
Now,
right.
you get a ghost from 2023. There might be some, there might be some choice words we all know.
Right. Little change there.
Yeah, for sure. So let's talk about. You want to talk about old? I'm sorry, Old South Pittsburgh.
Sure, we can talk about whatever you want to talk about. I'm all in.
So, how did you start to? Did one come before the other? Did you get them both together? How is it that you were able to acquire such great locations?
So South Pittsburgh, we've owned for about 6 years now, and then Harriman, I think we're on year 2. South Pittsburgh was just by chance. As a paranormal investigator, I was doing a Tennessee tour, basically. So I talked to a gentleman, and he gave me like locations to go to. And because I'm from Illinois, I wanted to do multiple locations instead of just coming to one. So South Pittsburgh was on the list, and believe it or not, the Temperance Building in Harriman, Tennessee, was on the list. And then we did a boys' school that's now closed down in Eastern Tennessee. And then we did another building, and I don't remember. I think that one's closed down as well too now. But yeah, so we did that. If anybody's been to South Pittsburgh Hospital, it's a really unique location. And it's kind of funny because I actually just got off the phone with somebody who's rebooking, but it's a building that when you walk in, it grabs you. It like literally grabs you. And it's like, hey, it just tugs at your heartstrings. It's got such an emotional feeling. And I was immediately hooked. We kept going back and back and back and back. And finally, one night, what really, really led me to the desire of owning the hospital is all the years I've been doing it, I've never seen a full body apparition, like ever. And a buddy of mine and I were on the 3rd floor. We were at the nurse's stage, or at the nursery. And him and I both witnessed a nurse walk right by us, kind of looked me in the eye like, you're not supposed to be on this floor this late at night. Walked past him and then opened up a door, and the door closed and she disappeared. And
wow.
It was the wild thing I ever imagined. I mean, that was kind of the holy grail for me. That was like, it was just amazing. And so I called the owner the next morning and I said, hey, I want to buy the building. And they were like, yeah, it's not for sale. And the reason being is because they were just making money hand over fist. They weren't putting any money back into the building. So everything they were doing was just being pocketed. So fast forward it was probably about 6 or 8 months later, I was actually back at the hospital, and I had ran into a lady, and I was telling her just how much I love the building and I really wanted to buy it, and it wasn't for sale. And she kind of winked at me and pulled me aside, and she says, well, I've got news for you. It's going up for sale real soon here. And I was like, well, why is that? And she says, well, the owners are in a little bit of a tax trouble, and it is being taken back by the government, and it's going to go up for auction and blah, blah, blah. And she gave me a business card and said, give her a call. And lo and behold, 6 years later, here we are owning South Pittsburgh Hospital. So, it's kind of funny. I think that a lot of people don't believe in, coincidences or anything like that. But I think this was just one of those things that I was in the right place at the right time. And some resident at South Pittsburgh Hospital wanted us to buy the hospital and fix it up and make it available for paranormal hunting. And kind of what happened was prior to that, the city of South Pittsburgh was going to demolish the building. And we were just weeks away from that happening. So I spent about 100 hours, myself and a couple other people that we are on the team. We spent about 100 hours with South Pittsburgh telling them all the great things that paranormal investigators bring. We're quiet at night. We're the greatest business in the world because we don't make noise. We're not troublemakers. So, and, we generate revenue. We generate sales tax, hotel tax, gasoline, dinner. So the wheels started spinning in South Pittsburgh's, city council, and they're like, well, let's give them a try. So we had a year trial with South Pittsburgh to see if we could make it and see what economic impact we did for South Pittsburgh. And they loved us. We did everything that we promised them. And like I said, one of the things was cleaning up the act and making sure that, the hospital was going down the right path in terms of, positivity and not negativity. And, they saw exactly how much I cared and loved for the building, the staff that we have of 40 at the building. We all dedicate a lot of time to the building and keeping it clean and up and running. And so 6 years later, here we are, and we bring a lot of revenue into South Pittsburgh in terms of tax dollars and that kind of thing. So yeah, it's a win-win. It's a win for the paranormal community, saving this beautiful building that was built in 1958, and also in the process bringing in tax money for, a tiny little town in central Tennessee.
Yeah. So built in 1958, it was a hospital until what happened? Why did it close? I mean, what happened?
So it was built in 1958. It actually opened in either August or October of 59. And it was actually designed by three doctors, Dr. Hedrick, Dr. Harriman, and Dr. Taylor. And most of the money that actually was funded for the hospital was actually donated by the community or grants, or they did, they did bonds. But it was all funded via the community. And it grew and it grew and it grew. It started as the Tri-City Clinic, which was just a clinic area. And then it grew to being 68,000 square feet now.
Wow.
It had everything from a nursery to, operating rooms to a psych ward at the end. It closed in 1999, primarily because if you've ever been there, the emergency area is tiny. It's 2 beds and 2 private beds. And for a community that was as big and growing as it was, it just outgrew the community, or the community outgrew the hospital. So Park Ridge actually opened not even probably 10 miles down the road in a less South Pittsburgh, kind of high and dry. In 1998 was actually when the hospital closed, but it's actually stayed up and running until 1999, where they did a drug and alcohol rehab on the 3rd floor. Funding ran out for that because it was privately funded. Funding ran out for that, and the actual last patient left in 1999. And then it sat vacant, up until paranormal people started investigating, I guess.
You said 68,000 acres?
68,000 square feet.
Square feet. I'm sorry. Acres. My God, that would have been huge. 68,000 is still big.
It's very big. It's on 5.4 acres. It's a beautiful building. I mean, it's kind of neat because when you pull up, hey, Rochelle's here. Hi, Rochelle.
Hey, Rish.
When you pull up to the building, it looks tiny because you only see the 3-story building in the front. And then you realize when you walk in that it actually goes out all the way into the mountainside. So it's a very large building. It's not as large as O is, but it's a very large building, and it's just very storied. It's just the more and more that we learn about it, the more and more we learn just how incredibly part of the community that the hospital was, and how much it serviced the community.
So I guess funding prevented, because you'd think if you have that much square foot, you'd be able to maybe remodel at some point to try to, keep up with the Joneses, if you will. You know what I mean? Like make the ER bigger and make it, to where, but I guess if they were depending on funding, it didn't sound like there was too much funding to go around.
Well, and the problem with that too is that if anybody knows, building wise, codes change. As codes change,
yeah,
the building becomes antiquated, and so kind of the way it goes is that in modern day, if you remodel 5,000 square feet or more, you've got to bring the rest of the building up to code. So in today's day and age, it's actually cheaper for them just to move to create a new building than it is for them to totally refix or bring up to code the old buildings. And that's what you find. That's kind of the problem with today's day and age, is that, like a good example is OSPH is only partially sprinkled. But once you do the renovations, you have to sprinkle the rest of the building. And you're talking, $1 million or $2 just to bring sprinklers in. So whereas if you go down the road, you can build that same building brand new from scratch with code and probably do it for, $1.5 million. And then energy efficiency as well too. Old buildings aren't as energy efficient as they are now. There's just a lot of reasons why it's cheaper and it's smarter to buy a new building and put the new building together than to rebring or recode an old building. For what we're using it for, we shut everything down. The first thing we did, which was really surprising, is the electric was actually on. There was 12, I think it was, I forgot what the amperage was, but it was an incredible amount of amperage. It was actually running. So the first thing we did is called the electric company and said, shut this down, because if somebody would trip into an electrical wire, they'd be dead. So we had, and this is what a lot of people don't understand is the expense of the old buildings. Even in our situation, is we had to have an electrician come in and run a new line and repower, regenerate the whole building or areas of the building, and bring that up to code instead of going off the old stuff. And that all costs money. And so a lot of people are like, well, you building owners, you're making so much money, you're charging so much money. But really the thing is that we are spending a ton of money just to keep these buildings healthy and up and going and that kind of a thing. And so I mean, it is a lot of work. It's a lot of code. It's a lot of this. It's a lot of that. I mean, we just put fire extinguishers in and it cost me almost $4,000 just for fire extinguishers.
Yeah.
So so it's costly.
Yeah, and that's the thing people don't understand. They think if just because you own, a property like that, you're rich and you're just like sitting back and that's why I like to have people on that own these types of locations, because I want people to understand, you're spending money to investigate in these places, but that money is going back. You become a part of that building's history. You become a part of that, like keeping that history alive,
Right.
Which is why I don't mind handing my money over to Ronnie Dee to investigate, you know what I mean? Because I know that the money's going to go into the preservation of the location.
Right.
And you're, and you care about more about the reputation, more about the history and more about that than you do selling it.
Right.
And that's important.
Well, we took over the building. Most people don't know this, but we moved 100 tons of garbage out of the building.
Wow.
100 tons. The average car is 2 tons. So we moved about 50 cars worth of weight out of the building. The old owner of the building used it as his kind of storage facility. And like one of the bathrooms had, I think, 1,100 rolls of wallpaper in it. It was moldy. It's kind of funny because it was really neat. We had a public investigation like last week or the week before last. And we had our first guest come back from like the old regime they haven't been to the building like 8 or 9 years. And they walked in the front door, which anybody who investigated Old South Pittsburgh prior to my ownership, you came through the back door because the front door there was crud just everywhere. So she walked through the front door and her mouth dropped and she says, "Is this South Pittsburgh Hospital? Am I in the right place?" And we kind of gave her a tour through the building and she's like, "Oh my gosh." She says, "I can't believe the work you guys did here." And those are the days where you look at your volunteers. I look at myself in the mirror and I'm just like, it kind of brings a sparkle and a tear to your eye because all that hard work paid off. Someone actually noticed how much work we've done and how much we care about the building and the residents and the history and all of their stuff. And to me, that's what makes it all worthwhile.
So 2-part question, while you're, cleaning up and renovating and doing all this stuff, did you find anything cool? And did you notice an uptick in the activity or a change in the activity as you guys were doing this?
Well, I can tell you all sorts of stories. We'd be on here until 11 o'clock tomorrow morning. But I'll tell you kind of some of the cool things. Or one of the probably the most major cool thing that I think happened is anybody who knows South Pittsburgh Hospital knows that we have a resident. His name is Jim. Jim was the caretaker of the building pretty much right after the building closed. Him and 3 of his friends actually lived in the building for quite some time. And kind of his deal is he took care of the building rent-free, had to pay utilities and such, but he took care of the building. One of the things that the old owners talked about was how big of a jerk he was. He was a pedophile. He was this, he was that. The list was really bad. And it was really kind of weird because I just couldn't figure out why. Well, we figured out down the road that there was some issues, family issues that made them kind of say bad things about him. Plus, once again, bad things sell. So there was a young lady while we were cleaning out the hospital, myself and oh my God, Candace and I. When he passed away, he did pass away in the hospital. He passed away of diabetic shock in the hospital. But we were going through one of the rooms, and in the back it was locked. And so Candace and I broke into the room of my own building. Kind of funny, but we broke into the room, and there are just files, and I'm not kidding you, from floor to ceiling. It was all of Jim's life that was shoved into the back corner of the hospital. Candace and I took back boxes and boxes of stuff to the hotel. We spent about 36 hours going through Jim's life. And remember, this was about 12 hours of working at the hospital. So we were up for about 3 days straight. And one of the rumors that was really unique about Jim was that everybody said he was gay and he was a drug abuser and he was a pedophile and all this other stuff. And so as we're going through Jim's paperwork, the first thing we come across is a web dating site that he had printed out on a stack of paper. And the first thing we come across is, haven't met the woman of my dreams yet. And I'm like, okay, well, that's BS. We just debunked that one. He's not gay.
He's not gay.
He's not gay. So then we went through and we found court documents actually on Jim, and he has a daughter that his ex-wife was actually saying that he was doing inappropriate things to his daughter and all this other stuff, and which is where the pedophilia came from. Well, we went through all the court documents. We found out that Jim's ex-wife was going after money and was making up stories about Jim. And he went to court on 3 separate occasions and was found innocent on all 3 separate counts and 3 separate occasions. Kind of going back to Jim's past, is Jim, when he was 17 years old, was beat almost to death by his father. His father put him in jail. His father put him in the hospital, knocked him unconscious. So Jim, when he turned 18, first thing he did was he enlisted in the Army and became a paratrooper. Spent many years in the Army where he was honorably discharged with diabetes. Then became part of Ringling Brothers Barnum and Bailey Circus, where he started.
That is like such a like that's such a cool history. Like, I mean, why would somebody deny that man of that? You know, well, I mean,
it gets better. So we're going through his history, and we found out that he started just as a painter with Ringling Brothers Barnum and Bailey Circus, and ended up as a set designer. He actually did a bunch of Disney on Ice for them. I've got just stacks and stacks of stuff that he painted and drew. He was actually so good with Ringling Brothers Barnum and Bailey Circus that they let him be a ringmaster a couple of times. He dressed as a clown a couple of times. But he was really quite an amazing man. And what's really, really neat is, we'll segue backwards, is that there was one of the staff members and I, we were actually in the hallway that Jim called home. And we were talking about Jim, and I was talking about some of the things that I had heard. And all of a sudden, and she was standing right in front of me, and we loved to talk to her, but she was standing right in front of me. And at the time I had really long hair, and all of a sudden we were talking about him, and somebody grabbed my hair so hard and yanked my head back. And she looked at me, turned white. She's like, oh my God, I just saw that happen. There was nobody behind me. It was just myself and the volunteer in the building. And we think that Jim was trying to grab my attention. As we talked more and more and more, he did it a second time, pulled my hair to get my attention. And we really, really think that Jim was reaching out to say, hey, I have a story, and you need to do the research and find out who I really was. And it's neat. So now that we've done that, when people come out to the hospital and investigate, they'll find that Jim is really, really kind of playful. He likes to pat girls on the butt. He'll kind of, do this through your hair.
But he's still looking for the woman of his dreams.
I think so. But even if you play music, like, he'll do like a REM pod or a K2 meter to the beat of music. He's really, really kind of a clown. And like I said, that was one of the things that I think that when you walked into the hospital, you had that dreadful, whatever you want to call it. And since we've been telling stuff about the truth of the hospital, our residents, Jim included, have become just so much different, just so much more interactive.
Yeah, I mean, if you're on the other side, let's just say for lack of knowledge, but I'm a ghost on the other side, and all these people are thinking I'm like, a pedophile and this and that, I'm going to be angry and pissed off, and, because how do you get that? How do you fix that? Right. So I can totally see how that would flip flop the energy in the place. You know, what you're doing it for the right reasons and the good reasons, like I had said earlier, you know.
Right.
And I think that's awesome. Now, do you find that do you find that it's mostly intelligent? Is it a mixture of intelligent residual? Is it, you know, residents of the hospital, workers?
I think we find residual, we find intelligent. Hey, it's Brian Murray. They're all here tonight. It's a lot of everything, and I think, you know, I really think that we get residual. And one of the things I think is really unique about hospitals in particular, we talk about this all the time, is that hospitals are the only building in the world that have everything from birth to death and everything in between happen.
Yeah.
So you have a building in the world, no matter where it is, that you have some of the greatest moments of your life, your first child being born. And then you have some of the worst moments in your life, that first child being born, passing away for some reason. So you have all of that. You have this just giant mix of energy in the buildings. And then you add in healthcare workers that back in the day, it wasn't uncommon for them to work 12, 14, 16-hour days. Some of them slept there for 2 or 3 days at a time. You know, all that energy is just in those walls. And I think that that's one of the things that makes hospitals such a unique paranormal place to investigate, because that energy is there. And, you know, it just gets trapped in those walls. And I think you have a lot of residual. You know, you have a nurse who is constantly doing her walks every night. Most of them take the same path. You know, they give the same meds at the same time. So you've got that kind of residual ingrained into the building. But then you also have people like Dr. O or Nurse Betty or some of our residents in the building that called that place home. They died in that location. And I think they're still there overseeing what's going on. And I think it makes for a really, really, you know, neat location for all sorts of activity.
Have you, do you, not that this makes a difference, but do you have, like, how many documented deaths on the property?
We work with a gentleman actually who's up in Alaska. He's Michael Cook, and we've asked him, and he's got it's a file about this wide of deaths that happened in the hospital. One thing that's a little tricky about South Pittsburgh is South Pittsburgh didn't have an ambulance service until the later parts of its operation. So like one of the doctors would actually leave the hospital and they would go to a house where they'd find somebody who passed away, but they would mark down South Pittsburgh Hospital as their place of death. So it's kind of a challenge for us to figure out exactly if they passed away in the building or if they passed away at home, and that's, you know, the place of death that they put down. So that one is kind of challenging. But I know Michael Cook is he's awesome. I mean, and I'll call him and I'll say, hey, you know, we came up with this name and blah, blah, blah. Can you do some research? And usually within a day, he'll get back to me and he's like, yeah, I've got this. And they died in the hospital and this is who it is and blah, blah, blah. And so, yeah, we've had a lot of paranormal teams come back with some names and some pretty cool evidence that we could match up to some of the deaths in the hospital.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So then you now you are acquiring, you 2 years ago. Am I saying, is it Harriman? Is that right? Is that
Harriman?
Harriman.
Yeah, just Harriman, Tennessee.
Okay, so Harriman Hospital. Have you found that in your 25 years, like that's what, you know, like some people say that, you know, like I tend to do, you know, good in asylums or stuff like that. Like, were hospitals always like your draw, or that's just how it happened? That's just how it's played out.
I think as an investigator, I did a little bit of everything. I think hospitals were my favorite. I spent a lot of time in hospitals as a kid. I played hockey. So as a kid, I was constantly having my nose reset. But I found hospitals just very intriguing. And I think the reason being is like what we talked about earlier. It's just that building that everything happens in. You know, and I think there's just so much, you know, that happens in a hospital. It doesn't happen in a lot of other locations. But Harriman is ginormous. Harriman is 186,000 square feet. It's in Eastern Tennessee. It's about 33 miles west of Knoxville. And it's a giant location. And this is another thing, like I said, that just, you know, when you think you're in the right place at the right time, like somebody shined a light on us and was like, you've got to do this. One of the girls that works for me, her name is Leanne, actually sends me this letter, and she says, they're going to knock down another hospital. They're going to knock down another hospital. We all get excited. So I actually called Harriman, and I was like, well, what are you guys doing? And they're like, well, we want to knock it down. We want to turn it into a parking lot, blah, blah, blah. And it was going to cost taxpayers about $12 million to knock it down.
Wow.
And again, we're talking about a little community. They don't have a great deal of money. Most little communities don't. And so we did the same thing. We went to the community, we went to the city hall, and we said, hey, give us a chance. Let's see what we can do with the building. Let's see if we can draw some revenue. Let's see if we can save this historic location. Harriman was born in 1938, so it's even older than South Pittsburgh by 20 years. And it's grown exponentially over the years that it was in operation. And once again, closed down just because they built a new one in Midtown, newer, nicer, bigger, more energy efficient. But what's really unique about this one is that prior to buying the hospital, we weren't sure if it was active or if it was even haunted or what it was, because really nobody investigated it, and it was owned by the city. It was closed down for 13 years. The city was maintaining it, taking care of it. So we got a hold of the mayor, and they said, hey, we want to come in and we want to investigate and see, if we're just buying a pile of bricks or if there's actually any activity in the building. I will tell you, we walked in the door and it started like wildfire. I mean, we heard voices, we heard footsteps, we heard, it was like the building was saying, come on, buy me, do something.
Yeah, save me.
Yeah.
Right.
So there are 8 of us, and this is kind of neat because I'm from Chicago, where we have the tightest gun policy in the world. And I was with all my Tennessee friends, and we were down there. And so prior to owning it, the police chief told me to be careful because there were some homeless that were utilizing the building at times, to sleep in and that kind of a thing. They kick them out, but they come back. So we were in the building, and there were 8 of us. And the girls, Brooke and I can't remember who else, I think Leanne and Heath, they had seen a tall, dark figure like walk right in front of one of the windows. So we were all like, oh shoot, somebody broke in, oh no. So as I turn around, everybody's got their guns drawn. It was like, holy cow, we're in Tennessee. I have nothing to worry about. I will tell you, I'm like 5'6", and when those guns got drawn, I felt like I was like 8'10". I was like, no, that's with us now. So we actually took the girls and we locked them in a safe room because we didn't know who was in the building with us. So we locked them in the safe room, and we did like a circle. It's when you get to O, there's like a circle on the second floor that goes from the operating rooms to the locker rooms to the hallway. It's like a big circle. So we saw the guy and we kind of chased him around, and then all of a sudden he just like disappeared. So we were kind of in the hallway for a while, and we couldn't find him. We like searched like everywhere. Us guys are walking around, and I'm the only one without a gun, and everybody else has got their guns drawn, and couldn't find the guy. So we let the girls out of the room, and right after the girls come out of the room, he reappears. Same place we saw him last time, big, tall. I mean, the girls can describe him like to the T. So we don't lock the girls in the room this time, and we kind of chase this spirit around for about 15 minutes. And just when we think we're going to catch him, he disappears.
Yeah.
So we come back around, and all of a sudden the door opens, and we all see him duck into this room. And we're like, oh, we'll go in the room. So all 8 of us walk into the room, and there's no way in and no way out except for the one door that he walked into, and there's nobody in the building. It's just us. And so one of the team looks at me and goes, "You're buying the darn building, right?" And I said, "Call him here, call him here." So we ended up striking up a deal with the city, and we're on a 5-year probation with them, which has, to make sure primarily that we keep the building clean. Once again, we keep our promises and that kind of stuff. We actually accelerated past what they wanted us to do, so our probation period is over. The building is completely ours, which is kind of cool. But I will tell you, we've had people who have come from other locations, world-renowned locations, and they walk into the building and they're like, "This just puts those places to shame." And I was like, "Well, what do you mean?" And they're like, "It is so active at Harriman that it's just incredible." Everything from full body operations. I mean, we've got people who are getting pictures of little kids in the building and just all sorts of unique things. But yeah, just a really, really crazy building. And I think primarily because it's never been investigated and it was
Yeah.
closed for 13 years. And then all of a sudden you got all these people coming in and you've got residents that are in the building who have stories to tell. And I think they're all really, really, really anxious to let us tell their stories.
This might be a hard question, but
Don't
do
make
you
me compare them.
do you love one more or the other? Are you like kind of like, I mean, are they, kind of equal? Does one have something that the other one doesn't, that kind of, you know,
I get this question asked all the time to me, and it's a real challenge because OSPH is always going to be my favorite because it's kind of like your first son or daughter. It's your
right.
firstborn. And no offense to the second daughter or third daughter or whatever you have at home, but that first one just really holds a special place in your heart because it's new and it's just I don't know how to describe.
Yeah.
But so OSPH is always my home. Like, I pull up, I get anxious, I get withdrawals when I leave.
Yeah.
O is a very close second, because just O is really neat because O is almost to the point where if we wanted to open it tomorrow as a hospital, it's in that good of condition.
Oh,
We've had Hollywood come out and they filmed 3 or 4 movies out there already. We've had PBS film. So the hospital at O is being used for more than just paranormal. It's being used. We're on the film registry for the United States. So we have all sorts of people who do that kind of thing. We have a rock video being shot here next month.
oh,
So
cool.
it's being used for all sorts of things. So like I said, they're 2 completely different buildings. So kind of the love for both of them is completely different. I will tell you this. OSPH, I have no problem walking around in the middle of the night in that building alone. I'm very comfortable in that building. O won't do it. There's
Really?
something about O that just frightens me to the core. Like we were talking about earlier, it's not demonic, it's not evil, it's just the unknown, I guess. And
Yeah.
walking through O at night, knowing how large it is, uh,
Yes. Intimidating.
yeah,
Intimidating.
very intimidating and very scary. And to me, I think that's what frightens me about O. But like I said, it's neat. We got surgery rooms from the 1950s that are intact,
That's
where
so
they've
cool.
got the green tiles on the wall and the surgical. It's just an amazing building.
Now, you're not
It
doing anything to renovate, right? You're going to leave it the way it is, and
Correct.
yeah,
We're
yeah,
not doing it at all. There's some areas of the building that are really rough that we're getting to. We just opened the cafeteria, I think about 4 or 5 months ago. It was real, real rough. We tore the walls down. We put new walls up, painted. We tried to bring it back to the way it was prior to it looking the way it did. It's a very slow, tedious process. Anybody who knows, what remodeling is, these old buildings are stucco. So, you got the mesh, and once they start getting wet, they start to deteriorate. It's a real challenge. But we got a huge team that works there, and every day we're working to try and bring her back to the way she was prior to the damage being done from water.
right. So if I were to want to investigate, you can't stay at either place, right? You can't stay overnight, or do you have overnights?
We do have overnights there from 6 p.m. to 4 a.m. We had to work with the state of Tennessee because they don't allow people to sleep in the buildings. Where OSPH, when I first bought it, the old owners were letting people sleep, and the fire marshal came in and said, no. So we do a 6 p.m. to 4 a.m. We have to leave the building. That's kind of the agreement we made with the cities as well as the fire marshal. And like I said, that's primarily because of we don't have the sleeping. We don't have the whatever you want to call it, the permits for sleeping.
Right.
But yeah, you're more than welcome. We've got people who come and they'll stay 6. They'll start at 6 p.m. They'll leave at 4 p.m. and 10 hours of investigating. A lot of times, is most people get that energy gets drawn down by the 10th hour you're in there.
Yeah. But you had mentioned there's like nearby places to stay and this and that. So people could stay there. Now, does anybody ever do a dual weekend? Like, okay, Friday night they do this, Saturday night they do, and then, if you don't mind me asking, I'm sure it's everywhere. So just like, how much does that cost for, a group to come in and let's just say we wanted to do, Old South Friday night and do O on Friday night or Saturday night?
So with all taxes included, because we do pay taxes, South Pittsburgh Hospital is $659.10, and that's from 1 to 8 investigators. Which, believe it or not, we've got a lot of just 2 people coming into the building, which I don't know. It seems kind of scary to me. Kind of like the smaller group, better than just me and one other person. But it's $659.10 at South Pittsburgh, and that's from 6 p.m. to 4 a.m. We're running a special right now. That's Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and that's for the summer months. And it's from 7 p.m. to 3 a.m. and it's $325 plus tax. Wow. So we're basically doing a 50% sale during the week to try and get some of the smaller groups out, because a lot of people are like, well, I only got 2 in the group or 4 in the group. So that kind of cuts down costs on that one. O is a lot bigger of a building. Property taxes are a lot more. Maintenance is a lot more. So that one is $850 with taxes included. It's the same thing at 6 p.m. to 4 a.m. And it's from 1 to 8 investigators. If you decide that you want to bring a bigger group and you want to bring 12 people, it's just $75 per person over 8. So you can bring as many people as you want, but there is an additional charge of, $75 per person at either location.
I got to tell you.
One more thing. O is Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. We have that half off special as well too, and that's $425 for Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And those are really great deals considering the location sizes and the amount of people that you're allowed to bring.
It's a really great deal considering that it is a legit haunted, they're legit haunted locations. And, because I'll be honest with you, there's a lot of locations that are charging $1,800 and this, like, there's these insane amounts, and it's nearly impossible for anybody to afford to be able to investigate in these places. So, I mean, what you're offering is very affordable, even on the Friday and Saturday night end of it. You get 2 great locations, for, I'm just going to say around at $1,500 to $1,600 for 2 awesome locations. You split that between 8 people. You know what I mean? And I mean, I think that's awesome what you're doing. You're not being greedy. You're not being, you're it's almost as if you're giving back to the community as well with being able, for us helping you out. You know what I mean?
Well, we tried, when I bought the hospitals, I tried to balance the budget. It sounds like we tried to balance the budget as best we could, because we know that, money's tight. I mean, and not everybody's got a ton of money to be wasting going to an investigation, that kind of stuff. So we kind of wanted to be economical with still being able to make the improvements and paying the taxes and that kind of stuff in the hospitals. So we really sat down and we talked about, and then what we did is we looked at, like you said, we looked at other locations, and we looked at Trans-Allegheny, we looked at Waverly, we looked at Edinburgh Manor. We looked at a lot of locations in terms of what their pricing structure was and how we can, kind of be affordable in that same kind of thing, to make sure that, we're not overcharging, but we're also keeping enough money, in the savings account if there's an emergency, like a roof leak or something like that. Because one of the things that people understand is we've got to have, funds there in case there's, like, a good example is the water main broke at OSPH, and it costs thousands of dollars to fix that. Right. And so money we set aside in case there's an emergency. And the old buildings, like I said, we have a lot of things happen. In our first year of operation, Tennessee had the worst winter ever, and our our backflows actually froze, and those things were outrageously expensive to replace. So we had to replace them to keep water in the building. And that's one thing that's really important to me as well too, is running water in bathrooms. Yes. Because I can't stand going to a location that doesn't have a bathroom. And when we didn't have the bathroom, we put porta potties outside, and I will tell you, it was miserable for not only my staff and I, but for our poor guests. We went a whole month without water in the building while the city had to fix the water main, and it was probably the most awful month I've ever had at OSPH without water.
Yeah. So. Yeah. I went to a location once where the porta potties were outside, and it was freezing cold in the building, let alone then having to go outside and use the porta pots. You know what I mean? And all that extra stuff does, like, if you're in the middle of investigating and you gotta be like, all right, I gotta go to the bathroom, you gotta go trucking through the whole place, and you're opening doors, and you know what I mean? It just, so I agree with you. I mean, I think it's awesome, that you do put in, and it's I mean, it's just like a lot of like Penhurst and, and places like that where you actually see your money is going back into the building. You see these things happening, and you want to spend your money there. It makes people want to give you the money, for lack of a better description, want to come and give it to you because they know that you're using it for the right reasons.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot of great location owners out there that are doing the same that we are, and vice versa.
Yeah.
And there's not so great location owners out there as well too. And I mean, it is what it is, but at the end of the day, I know we set our standards very high. Our locations are clean, we got running water, we have electricity. We want you to be able to come in and enjoy the evening and not have to worry about, contamination of evidence, contamination of your body, that kind of stuff. And like I said, we want to make sure that if you got to go to the washroom, you got running water, or, you need to charge your equipment. We've got electricity to do that as well too. And, you're not walking into a really dangerous situation where you might fall through a floor or roof might cave in on you, or, we keep our locations very, very clean. Anybody who's visited O or OSPH, my volunteers and staff, I mean, they put their hearts on the line every day, keeping those locations clean. And we landscape and we do painting and, all that stuff. So it's really, really important that, we keep these locations pretty. And I also think it's really important for the residents and the spirits that we have in the building, because they're taking pride in the location. If we're just going to get run down, who wants to live there?
Right.
So, the more that we take care of the buildings, the more our residents are happy. And the more the residents are happy, the more they're going to interact with us. The more paranormal activity we get, the happier you are, the happier I am. So it works, it's a 360 circle.
It's one of the things I always say when I go into somewhere, where I'm new or whatever. I just always say, hey, listen, if it was your place, I'd be like, Ronnie invited us in, and he's doing this so that we can help him. We're friends, so we can help him to maintain the building that you're in, and so we're here just to talk and chit chat, and we're not here for we want to help to maintain the building and keep it your home for as long as you want it to be your home, because that's what it is, really. Before I let you go, I want to of the two places. Now, I know probably that you seeing the nurse walk past you, in the door, shut the door. I'm just going to assume that that's probably the most crazy thing that's happened to you there. But what about, I'm just going to say,
Oh, you're right. Oh. Well, I like that because it's really great when people walk in, they're like, oh! The building, or did you say, yeah. It's really neat. I don't really hunt anymore. I don't really investigate anymore because all of my time is really on maintaining the building. But I will tell you that most people will tell you this too, is that when you're doing an investigation, I think a lot of the teams will actually get more experiences or more evidence when they're not hunting.
Yes, I know it does happen.
Having a conversation and you're going about your business. And so one of the things that was really, really frightening to me, we had just bought O, and I was in the old gift shop, and we had a movie come through that's actually airing, I think, next month at movie theaters. It's called Grounded. Great people. But I was actually on the ladder, and I know most men, because women aren't stupid like us men are. But there's that little top of the ladder where it says "Do not stop, may cause injury and fall." Well, I'm not a really tall guy, so of course I got to step on that top, rung in order for me to do the lights that the movie wanted me to do. So I'm actually by myself in the building, and I'm on that top rung, and my second foot is on the one rung below that. And all of a sudden, I feel my leg get grabbed really hard. I mean, to the point where it was like a hand, and I hear, "Be careful." And I'm like, I turn around and I look, and there's nobody there. It's just me alone in the building.
Wow.
Drive down from the ladder, and it took my breath away because it was really kind of freaky and kind of scary. I've never been grabbed other than by Jim that aggressively. So I sat down in one of the chairs in the lobby, and you know how when you feel that kind of energy go by you, it's kind of like that whoosh.
Yeah.
Well, I felt the energy go by me, and the chair squeaks next to me, and I kind of feel the noise, and I hear, "Glad you're okay." And I'm like, that's it. I'm going to go sit on the front steps. So I go sit on the
Oh,
front steps, and the team comes walking up, and they're like, "What's wrong?" I said, "Oh my God, I'm telling everybody the experience." And Rhonda is like, "Oh, that happens to me all the time." I'm like, okay. So Rhonda is kind of the caretaker of the building, who's there like 24/7. Pretty much, she lives in the building. Not really, but she's there that often,
right,
and
right,
she
right.
has so many experience. And so yeah, so it was really kind of neat. But as time goes by, just doing the regular old, we put new floors down, we did this, we did that, and we'll hear voices. We'll see people walking behind us if there's nobody there. Brooke and I were actually walking out of geriatric psych wing, and she turned white. And I'm like, "What's wrong?" She says, "There's a nurse standing there," and she like described the nurse to a T. It was she saw her so vividly that we actually pulled up pictures on Google and realized what year that the outfit she was wearing was. And she said it was somewhere like in the early 60s. So it's
That's
really, really neat that we're having those kind of experiences. And what's really, really neat is when we have a guest that comes through and they have the same experience. And they're like, "Oh, we saw a nurse at this, at this nurse's station." We don't share stuff with anybody because we
yeah.
don't want to like. So we're like, "Well, tell us what she looked like." And I'll be darned if it's not the same nurse that Brooke had
Wow,
seen.
that's awesome. Do you have do you have security cameras like
We
up in
do.
the buildings? Like
We do.
do you ever go back and watch and see if you caught anything or
We do occasionally. Most of the cameras we have are around the perimeter. We have some inside, but most of them are around the perimeter because you don't want people getting in.
right,
But we had a significant happening. I think it was about a year and a half ago, where we had a team that was walking down the hallway, and they said that they thought they saw somebody behind them walking with them, and there were 3 people walking down the hall. So we pulled up the security cameras, and lo and behold, there's a 4th person walking behind them. It's
wow,
clear as day on the security camera. And so we
wow.
showed it to them, and they're like, "Whoa, we felt that
Love that.
person walking
Oh,
with
that's
us."
so cool. That is so cool. Good for them.
So
Um, I know you have some events coming up.
we do.
So quickly, not quickly, I'm not trying to rush, but just saying like let everybody know. I know that Rochelle is coming next week.
We are so excited because I will tell you,
And is Cody and Satori coming with them as
Cody and
well?
Satori are coming with Brian and Rochelle. That's correct. Brian and Rochelle are bringing their friends Cody and Satori with them. I will tell you though that one of the things that's really neat about the paranormal is you do, and you know them really well too, is that you start to grab relationships with some people. And anybody who hasn't met Brian and Rochelle, Brian Murray and Rochelle Stratton, they are 2 of the most amazing people I've ever
Yeah,
had the opportunity to investigate with and to call my friends. We have just a great time with them. They are bringing Cody and Satori out. They will be at the hospital, I think, June 6th. It's 7th and 8th, I think. It's that weekend. Whatever those 2 days are, I think it's the 7th and 8th. They'll be at the hospital to do an investigation and just to say hi and meet and greets and all other stuff. But I will tell you, like I said, Brian and Rochelle, I adore them. I love both of them. As
they
long as
really
Brian
are
doesn't fall down the stairs or the escalator, it's all good. Brian's the clumsiest man I think I've ever met.
great.
But I mean, they're just amazing people, and I think what sets Brian and Rochelle apart is their sincerity to the paranormal. I mean, it was really kind of neat because they come to South Pittsburgh Hospital, and people reached out to them and said, is South Pittsburgh really haunted? And they're honest. They were
Yeah,
like, there's claims, we've been there, we've had some experiences. Would I call it super haunted? Well, I haven't had that experience yet. Well, they were there last year and they got to see a full body apparition walk right past them. And now it's really funny because when somebody says, "Is Old South Pittsburgh haunted?" Brian goes, "Damn right it is." And they'll tell you what the whole experience they had and all other stuff. So it's really neat. But I think that's one of the things that really sets them apart is they don't make things up. They're
right.
very sincere. They're very, very good for the paranormal. And like I said, I'm very blessed to have them as friends in my life. And Brian and Rochelle, we talk all the time. As a matter of fact, I talked to Brian today a little while. And we're kind of making fun of each other. He's just a really neat guy. And Rochelle, I like her because she's just, this is me. You either
Yeah,
like me or you don't. And if you don't like me, then I don't have time, And I
yeah,
think that's really kind of unique about Rochelle.
yeah, yeah, for sure. I'm blessed to know them and call them friends. I mean, and together. I like literally I laugh constantly when they're together. Like I listen to their podcast and I mean they are so funny together. Like I just you so that energy in itself bounces off to everybody. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like you really can't be in a bad mood when you're around the two of them.
No,
You just can't, even if you
no,
wanted to.
and I think that's something that's really good for investigating too, because they're so lighthearted and fun. They make
Yeah.
everybody feel comfortable. They make the residents feel comfortable, and they mesh so well together that it's just, yeah, it's like a comedy show while you're investigating, and it's just really, really, really a lot of fun.
That's awesome. I'm glad that they're so invested in your properties and helping you out there, and they love them and that they had the experiences. One day, me and my peaches will get there. I'm a part of a group of 7 women, and we're called Paranormal Peaches. And we go to all these locations, you know, and we're in New Jersey and one's in Maryland, but you know, we keep on saying we want to broaden our horizons and you know get out further out in the States and you know, I know that here's one of them. Hell yes.
If you guys are going to come down in fall, because there is no more of a beautiful place than Tennessee when those leaves start changing. I
Oh
will
my
tell you, I go down there. Like I said, I've been doing this for 6 years now because I'm a Chicago native. My home is soon going to be Tennessee as well. But it's just breathtaking. And it's really, really funny because the Walmart, which is next to South Pittsburgh, is at the foothills of Kimball Mountain. And it's funny because I'll be out, you know, there we'll be picking up something for the hospital or whatever, or picking up lunch. And I'm taking pictures of the mountain and people are looking at me like, what the hell is he doing? But the setting of Walmart up against the backsplash of the mountains, when those colors like just start changing, there's just, I mean, it brings tears to your eyes. It is just an amazing, amazing, amazing state. I mean, there's no other beauty like it.
Well, I'm definitely going to put this one. I'm going to put sorry, that's not you. I'm jet lagged still. But I'm definitely going to put your locations on our, how far out, like booked, you know what I mean? Like, are you booked out pretty far on the weekends? Like,
We're pretty solid up until September and October. And then we got some openings in September and October.
October?
Yeah.
I'm surprised. You know, October, you would think,
We're kind of weird. We for the past 4 or 5 years, it's weird. We're last minute bookers for South Pittsburgh and Harriman. It's like it's funny because we start getting panicking. It's like Halloween and like we're not solidly booked, and then it'll be like August, and all of a sudden the calendar is full, and everybody's thinking, we told you, but we're kind of like our locations are kind of last minute booking locations, and I think primarily is because we're in Tennessee. And just that area. But yeah, once usually, I would say usually July and August, we really, really start heavily booking for fall.
That's awesome. Good for you guys. Well, and where can they just go on to the pages for the locations to book, or do they email you, or do they get in touch with you?
You can go to, so we have 2 separate websites. One is osphprc.com, and that is the Old South Pittsburgh Hospital Paranormal Research Center. Oh, congratulations. I didn't know you were engaged.
Yes, just happened. Yep.
Cruise?
Yes, on the cruise on top of Mount Vesuvius.
Oh, how romantic.
Yeah. Well, he said if I said no, he was going to push me in. So.
Well, he's a lucky man. You tell him that.
I will. Thank you.
And then the other one is oldhistorichairmanhospital.com.
Okay.
So either one of those, or you can go on Facebook and just Google Old South Pittsburgh Hospital, or go on Facebook and search Old South Pittsburgh Hospital, or on Facebook, Old Historic Harriman Hospital, and they'll pop up.
Awesome. Ronnie, it's been a pleasure having you on. And listen, I want to tell everybody, I say this on all my shows, please share it out. Not for me, not for Paranormal Brew, but for Ronnie and his awesome locations. Put the word, hey, Mike.
They'll be out at both of our locations in September. And I will tell you, Mike and Chris, another 2 amazing people.
Yes.
We have a blast with them as well, too. But they're out at locations in September. I think they're at O on a Friday night and OSPH on a Saturday night. I will tell you, if you want to get with them at OSPH, book those tickets like quickly. We sell out when they're in the building. They sell out every
They
time.
have an incredible following of faithful fans. Like literally, like people don't understand. Like I was surprised. I had them on my show. It was like one of like the highest watch shows. Like I mean, they have such a huge faithful following.
They're so personable. I mean, and
Yeah,
like I
they're
have a
great.
blast with them. I mean, when they're out, once again, they're just. I'm really blessed to have some of these as my friends. But when Chris and Mike are out, I mean, they're just so personable. They're so much fun. You know, they come up September 6th and 7th. They're at OSPH and O. But they'll come early. We'll goof around with them, and they're just so personable.
Yeah.
And what I like about Brian, Rochelle, and Mike and Chris is they're on the lighter side of the investigating. They're not super serious. You know, they're having fun. And I think that's what's really important when you go to a public investigation is that we're there to have fun. But the most important thing is when those four are doing their publics with us is they really bring the guests into the investigation. And I think that's really neat is that it's their investigation and Mike and Chris are just there to have fun. And it's really kind of neat. And Mike, you're not blushing. Stop it.
You're making him blush. You're making him blush.
No, just really great guys. And like I said, it is just, I'm very blessed to have them as friends as well too.
Absolutely. They are really great guys. And listen, hopefully one day you'll fall in love with the Peaches when we come out. You'll fall in love with us.
I'm looking forward to having you.
Yeah, and then we'll be, you know, we have a lot of fun. We do have fun when we go on our locations, but well, I guess it's time to let you go. I don't want to, but I have to. I mean, it's an hour and 15 minutes. I've had you, and but I appreciate you coming on. And like I said, I tell everybody, please share it out. Not for me and not for Paranormal Brew, but for Ronnie and Old South Pittsburgh Hospital and O.
Doesn't that sound great? I think that's like the most catchiest of all the buildings. Oh, what? Oh.
And I'm definitely we're gonna try to plan something probably for next year probably, but definitely want to come out and check your places out. So I appreciate you coming on and sharing your information, your stories, and about your locations that you have. I really appreciate it.
Anytime you want to have me on, just give me a call. Would love to do this again, and we've got so many more stories to tell.
Yeah. You know, maybe one time we could do like if you're like on location and kind of just like walk around a little bit, show people the place, and you know, we could always do something like that. You know, not investigate, but maybe just walk around. And,
anytime you let me know, I'll be happy to do that.
Yeah. Oh, my Peach Kim is saying, how could he not love peaches?
I mean, it'd be really fun. We have done that where we walked around. I've been on Kate, I think Kat's show, and we'd walk around with the laptop and show everybody the building. It was kind of neat, and we had some paranormal experiences actually. Just while we're doing it as well too. Yeah,
that might be. So yeah, I definitely will. I definitely will be in touch with you because I would love to do something like that.
Sure. Anytime.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming on. And I'll talk. Yeah. And I will talk to you soon, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.